Welcome to Rotten2thebit. My name's Dizzy and I have one question to ask you. Have you played this? Have you? You know that game? You know the game I'm talking about. That game that you play and it's one of those experiences. You just have to tell everyone, tell all your friends that they have to play this game. And then you don't play it for a while after you beat it. A couple years go by and you think, man, I remember that really good game. I'm gonna play that game again. So you pop it in and you're full of promise and you're full of hope. And it's terrible. It's awful. It's motherfucking garbage. It's Christian promises. It's demon semen. It's behemoth vomit. It's dead cats. It's burning puppies. That's Manhunt for me. That's what this fucking game is. It was mine. I loved it. So much. Well, enough stalling. What is Manhunt? What is it?
It looks like this goes all the way to the top. I can't trust anyone, least of all the police, and time's running out. I've got to get the one piece of evidence that will expose Starkweather without a shadow of a doubt. Footage and testimony of a man who was executed by the state 5 hours ago.
What is Manhunt? Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, and man, I love this game, man. Just keep going with the review. Just keep going with the review. In Manhunt, you play as James Earl Cash, a prisoner who is set up to be executed, but instead, he is only sedated, and then wakes up to be informed he has to brutally murder people, or be murdered, for the amusement of Starkweather, a snuff film producer. Sounds exciting, sounds amazing, sounds bloody fucking murder. But is it? Manhunt is a stealth survival horror game, and it only really has two gameplay mechanics, and that's hide and mass murder at first. The game came out in 2003, so inevitably it feels sort of dated. But honestly, once you get past that, the game plays rather well at first. And though kind of stiff, the game never really feels unfair at first. The game is built in a way where you have to hide at first, because every area is being patrolled by a gang, who each have their own gimmicks and weapons. And if you aren't hiding, they will swarm you and gang beat you to death in seconds at first. You're starting to pick up a pattern here, aren't you? Let me stick to the at first part of the game. The first half is a pure stealth horror, and the feeling of helplessness is strong and powerful. Cash may be a strong and dangerous criminal, but that doesn't mean anything in the face of 2 or 3 psychopaths, stomping the ever-living shit out of him. The game uses a cover system to crawl across walls and into the shadows to try and avoid getting caught. The biggest draw of the game is the execution system. When sneaking up behind a gang member, there is 3 levels of executions you can perform, each more violent than the last. The game has a point system and gives you more points at the end of the level if you perform more violent executions. You perform them by sneaking up behind a gangster and either quickly hitting the correct button, holding it briefly, or holding it for a good second. The longer you hold the button, the better the execution, but the more chance you will get caught. The game is difficult this way, because though it is possible to hide again when you get caught, you can lose a good amount of health trying to hide. This is when the game is at its most effective, that feeling you get when trying to escape these psychos. And on top of that, there's very limited checkpoints, so dying has real consequences. You know, until guns are introduced. I know what you're thinking. This isn't the first time a good survival horror game introduced guns into the equation. So what makes this game different from all those other games? Why is this game worse with guns? And that's very, very simple. Simple answer is, those other games had zombies and monsters, not people who also carry guns. This is a fucking problem. And when the game takes a turn. The first time a gun is introduced, it's fine, because it's effectively useless, and same with the second gun. But after that, the game basically becomes a third-person shooter. Entire levels of the game are just giant cover shooting segments. Now, that was impressive in 2003, because there was only one other game that comes to mind that used a cover-based shooting system. But the problem is, after those few levels where it's clear you're supposed to shoot your way out, because the guns don't disappear. So what does that mean? It means you find a dude with a gun, you kill him, and then the game no longer is a stealth game. Because everyone else with a gun gives you ammo. And the game still wants you to use the executions, but there's no fucking point. On top of that, the AI is not built for guns. So more than a few times, I just find a spot, make some noise, then gun down every character who enters the room easily. There's also a long, drawn-out sniper section, which I feel like was supposed to be hard, but it's so easy that the length is so fucking noticeable. This is unfortunate because the game is visually amazing for its time. Each gang has a very unique look and feel, having their personality shown through their clothing and mannerisms. On top of that, the soundtrack has a 1980s synth feel that gives you a good horror movie vibe. Plus, when performing executions, there's a filter that looks like an old VHS tape, which gives credence to the snuff film theme of the game. I have no idea why guns are introduced into the game. It takes a good stealth game and shits all over it. It actually ruins the whole game. Even if you try and stealth it, you better not get caught, because running away from 3 dudes with guns is nearly impossible.
I didn't want to be that guy, man. Just like yelling shit about video games. I love this game, man. I love violence. I love murder. Guns ruined it, man. Just gotta keep going. Calm down. Take a break. Get myself some fresh long pig. Grill it up. Eat it up. Maybe some long piglet. That's what any good demon would do. They'd get through this. I love this game, man. Just keep going. Move on to the story.
The story is wicked transparent, which isn't a bad thing. It's so clear that the story was only really made so that the developers could find a way to justify intense mass murder. James Earl Cash wakes up after supposedly being executed in a dank, condemned town full of violent gangsters and sociopaths. Through an earpiece, Cash is connected with the villain of the game, Starkweather, who wants Cash to murder everyone he sees, so Starkweather can record the mass violence and sell it. For the first half of the game, the story is simplified. Go through the area, killing everyone, Cash gets taken to a new area, has to kill more people. After that part, Cash escapes the clutches of Starkweather, and the story becomes a vengeance story as Cash tries to hunt down his kidnapper and murder him. The story isn't a big draw for this game, and that's because the atmosphere and dread of horror is supposed to take precedent over the need for a story. That would totally work if the game didn't kill its mood in the second half. That feeling you get when wondering if a hunter will turn around before you can execute him is paramount and necessary, and without it the game feels hollow. The one thing that stays rather consistent is Brian Cox, the voice of Starkweather. He does such a good job at playing this skeezy dirtbag that even when you are breezing through the gun sections of the game, you can almost forget how much fun you are not having.
I know. This is supposed to be the story section, so let's move on to the failings of the story. How about that?
One of the biggest things that fails in this bare-bones story is the obvious plot contrivances. In the beginning of the second half of the game, you were caught and beaten up by one of Starkweather's head goons, and instead of just killing you, he lets you go, because this is supposed to be a stealth game. But who would do that? So of course you kill him, but you don't feel accomplished. Instead, you just want to scream "moron" to the screen over and over again. Seriously, think about this. By this point, Cash has murdered hundreds of people by himself, and you caught him. But instead of killing him, you let him do what he was doing, which allowed him to murder all those men.
I've been really hard on this game, I know. Like, really hard. Like, vomited on the game disc when you guys weren't looking hard. Like ejaculated all over it. Like, took a giant dump on it and then served it to an orphanage saying it was chocolate pudding hard. But I guess the only really important question is, you know, is it fun? Is it?
No, this game does not hold up at all, and is far from fun. Even for its time, there are much better stealth games and even better horror games. The game rested on this gimmick of uber violence, murder, murder. But when you introduce a mechanic that makes that gimmick pointless, then we are forced to focus on all the game's flaws. Like, what the fuck was wrong with these developers? Why did they think this was a good fucking idea? The first part of the game is dated, but fun. The second part of the game is abysmal, and it's cemented by the fact, even if you try and sneak through the second part, it's just so frustrating when you get caught that it's like, what's the fucking point of sneaking? I have a shotgun and all of this ammo. It's stupid not to use it.
In conclusion, this game's terrible. When people talk about this game, they tend to only talk about the ultra gimmicky part, the executions. But when you look at the game as a whole, it becomes a bland stealth game that gives up on the stealth. If you want a good stealth game of the era, check out the PC Thief games. Those games are great. Check out the old school MGS games, how they came out before this, and they're much better. You want a good survival horror game of the era, well, there's Resident Evil, Silent Hill. Hey, go way back and look at Alone in the Dark. This game was amazing to me as a kid, but honestly, it does not hold up. And not only doesn't it not hold up, it's frustratingly awful. It takes everything that could have been great about it and throws it out the window. Guns literally ruin it. And I know I'm harping on that subject, but really the whole point of the game was to feel helpless, was to feel like you couldn't take on the world and you had to rely on your ingenuity. But they gave up on that. By adding in guns and not the right AI, you can just gun down everyone with ease. Anyway, this has been Rotten to the Bit. My name's Dizzy, and remember, I am always watching you.